which once integrated, could reveal a portrait of his concealed identity and a unified narrative of his torturous journey. The mystical journey seeks the restoration of the self-divine image, or to paraphrase Dante, the transhumanization from man into God. In Eastern theology, theosis. This concept is given a wrenching twist in the following poem from May 26, 1972, which he wrote after 5 months of solitary confinement. Я бачу тільки тінь твою, і вже ані обличчя, ані рук не бачу, і чую, що з тобою разом трачу те все, що нас на світі береже. Скололась крига, філка чорноти так тяжко надимається з натуги. Нема ані дружини, ані друга, і де не глянь, все ти, і ти, і ти. Моя жалка самотності, сестро, моя віками долана прамати, ти не живеш, а вчишся помирати, офірувавши синові перо. Залито ртуттю, висліплою стуги, далекий погук і далекий крик. Ох, як ти звик, о, як ти тільки звик, сам, без дружини, без сестри і друга. On one level, this is a poem about longing. The repetition of the pronoun of address, emphasizes the speaker's desperation and lends a most compelling dynamism to the lyric. His identification of the self with a shadow points to the loss of physiognomy, and by extension, the absence and deliberate denial of emphatic human mirroring that occurs in penal institutions. Thus, the poem implicitly raises the question whether transhumanization, theosis, is possible in a dehumanizing environment. From a Skowrotian perspective, however, the use of the umbral shadow metaphor implies that the speaker is losing contact with his essential principle. That is, the enduring but invisible light which sustains his perishable humanity. Because his pen is filled with the metallic chemical that is applied to glass to transform it into a reflecting surface, però залите ртуттю, it represents the very specular medium through which the speaker could restore his own divine image. The admission that his mirror, pen, has been blinded by longing manifests consciousness of the fact that for him poetry constitutes his divine prototype, or in the speaker's own words, his primordial mother. Моя віками долана прамати. Concealed within the name of the chemical, tut is an allusion to Mercury, in Greek, Hermes, the interpreter. Thus, to dissipate the shadow and perceive his own inner light, this particular mystic needs to mirror or interpret the original creative act, the logos, that separated the light and the darkness, the Buddha seed. An act of speaking, but also an act of writing in Genesis. This indeed happens as the poem is written. The blank ink slowly begins to stream along the icy and unyielding whiteness of paper. Skololas kriha. In a poem written only a day or two later, the speaker acknowledges that exhaustion has overtaken him. He exhorts the self to divinely create life, not death. Життя, не смерть боготвори. Besides implying that the author has been devoting too much attention to depressing topics, the poem introduces the antinomic dyad, life, death, which complements those of the preceding poem, form, formlessness, light, darkness. Taken together, these two poems recast the parallel between the first book of Genesis and the Johannine prologue. 2 months later, Stus's mystical speaker engaged in a more overt and very existential recasting of John's prologue, слово. Оте хистке, ледь з'явлене, котре назвало нас і темінь означило, сягнувши споду, глибше суть бере, аби вона повік його корила, щоб набухали жалем бинди вен і червоніли з гагою завзяття, аби збагнув, чий вік немов прокляття, що він отим прокляттям і блажен. This poem is one of the very few in the collection A Time of Creativity which has a title. I suggest that one of the conceptual intertexts for this poem, and others like it, is Kuvarudas the Narcissus, whose 7 colloquies on self-cognition represent their author's symbolical recreation of the world and regeneration of the self through the imitation of the original act of speech, the Buddhist speech, as recorded in Genesis and echoed in the Johannine prologue. When read from this perspective, the title of the collection Stus prepared in solitary confinement, Час творчости, Liftenszeit, suggests that he approached this trying period in his life as a time for recreating the self. Перетворення. When Skovoroda appended in 1794 a prologue to his earliest prose composition, he referred to the Narcissus as his firstborn son, and marshaled a syncretistic conceit that fuses into one theme the regeneration of the Narcissus, the metamorphosis of a chrysalis, that is a pupa, into a butterfly, the renewal of the cosmogonic phoenix, and the resurrection of the sun. This very baroque construct metaphorically conveys Skovoroda's original creative act, writing his first progeny, and subsequent interpretive or critical act, reading his first progeny, as a concatenation of death and renewal out of the self. At the